So this is to kick things off, October 25th, Monday, meeting of the Manufacturing Oversight Committee for the Helium Network. Have all committee members present with the exception of Felipe. So I believe we can proceed. Sophie, do you want to talk about, do you want to lead us into top agenda items? Is that all right?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm trying to. All right, we have a few status things just so everyone knows. I'm also waiting for Otter to load up. The thing I usually, Christina doesn't have it yet, so I'm gonna do an audio recording right now. Okay. So status-wise, we have Codex, they've submitted another HIP 19 for outdoor units. And I thought we would resume the process November 1st, which just gives us a little bit of space to get this other thing out of the way. If there's no objections, I'll just move on. Dragino has been approved by everybody, async. We have two people that I've put, there's 80 proposals right now to go through, and I've just started going through them to see who has the security implementation. So definitely, if anyone has a chance to look at the HIP 19 channel, the GitHub, be really helpful to just get some second eyes on all of that stuff. They all get a first look when they first apply, but it seems like there's a couple of things here who slipped through. Pisces preemptively sent over an email with some photos about why they may look like Codex online. And we'll come back to that because their email is so big that it's taking a little bit of time to load. I'm just gonna share it async in the channel, I think. Okay, decisions. This is Gristle King, Nick. Nick was voted in by everybody, but we wonder if the general is there a conflict of interest if mock members work with vendors or distributors? So this is up for discussion. And I think all of us have connections with vendors and distributors. So where do we draw the line?
Nick, can't hear you. You're still, I think, Nick, we're still having an issue with your microphone. Can't hear you. Sorry, bud.
I also just want to, this is not, Nick, this is not just singling you out. It happens to have come out because you're here, but other people have approached us about being on the mock, approached the general us, and we've said no because they're working for a distributor, working for a vendor, or something like that.
Yeah, my feeling, at least just really quickly when we originally started this, was that, if you are employed directly by a manufacturer or a reseller, that was kind of the drawing the line in the sand about where we felt like there was too much conflict on that. But obviously with Brad being one of the original appointees, working directly with manufacturers, at least in a situation, Brad brought the right kind of value and comprehension of all things network related, technology and compliance to this conversation. That it's very valuable to have you here, Brad. And when I think about the fact of as the network continues to grow and as we're going to want to maximize for distributed participation, I don't want to draw the line so far that we are so limited in the talent that can come into this committee. Again, my feeling is that a manufacturer, Tim from Longview is another great, somebody who would bring incredible value here, but working directly for a manufacturer and judging your potential competitors, that felt like a little bit, line too far. But oh, Brad, sorry, you got some?
Well, I was waiting for you to finish, but then I was just gonna make a comment.
Oh yeah, no, that's basically, I'll wrap up of, I want to make sure that as long as people, if you recuse yourself from instances where you see there's a potential conflict, but I think otherwise we want to make sure there's enough leeway that we can have, maximum participation and input from the right folks. So
yeah, I was just, this comes back to the topic I brought up, I think a call ago, is what is the composite of the committee? And I don't think every committee member is the same. I think we should actually strive to define what the ideal composite of the committee is, and maybe 2 seats on the committee you acknowledge are people who are maybe work for a manufacturer or a distributor, because I think having their inputs is actually really valuable, because they have a firsthand account of, I think most of these companies are ethical, trying to do the right thing. They can give us insight into some of the challenges, some of the decisions we make that maybe are very difficult or counterproductive to them. So as long as the whole committee isn't run by self-serving, OEM representatives, then, and maybe they don't vote on everything, right? Maybe they only participate on certain aspects of the committee, and they abstain from votes on like OEM approvals. So I would come back to, having made progress on kind of outlining what the ideal composite of the committee is to begin with.
Totally valid points. From my side, no, we have not made enough progress on actually outlining what that should look like and defining how many seats do we want to have? Do we want to cap that? Which representation from the different stakeholders across the ecosystem? I think that's something we absolutely need to work on.
Cool.
Any other
You guys can hear me
comments?
now? A little better?
Yep.
Cool. So I brought it up just because I've got, I think Rack and SenseCap are supposed to send me some stuff to work on projects we're going to put in. As weird as they sound, like a bunch of sensors in an orphanage and a camel farm, or those are the two projects. And so I just didn't want to be on this thing and getting either stuff or free stuff or advice or whatever, a connection with them. And then that comes out later, like, what's going on? That's not right. So yeah, maybe there's some disclosure piece like, hey, these are the projects I'm working on, but that was,
I mean, full disclosure for me, like, Emirates has bought a lot of rack units. We buy stuff from CalChip. We're diversifying our supply base. We've worked with Kerlink. I personally have reclused myself internally from the procurement cycle. Like, so I'm not sending, because I don't want to, and we've aligned internally in Emirates, like, I'm not part of quoting, bidding, any of this kind of stuff at Emirates, but clearly that, my day job, and, I am interacting with the gateway manufacturers and evaluating their product and so forth and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like maybe one thing we're all comfortable with is at least disclosing those areas where we think we could have possible conflicts, and being open with that. That seems to be like the easiest way to solve some of these potential problems. And then, I don't know, I think we all have ideas, very strong ideas about how things can go sideways. And I like that we're at least talking about it. So it's a cool topic for me.
Any other comments on this one? So my feeling, if there's no other comments, is I would say that, Christina, this is something that you can kind of spearhead as one of your early projects is, work with a couple of the guys here and start thinking about, get some opinions, and let's start actually putting together an outline about like, what is the ideal, again, to Brad's point of like, what does the ideal committee start to look like? What should we be aiming for long term? It might not be the makeup today, but how are we thinking about what wants to look like in the next, 6 to 12 months? I think that as long as people are disclosing or recusing themselves from votes when it's appropriate, and again, we're cataloging all of that here publicly. We've got recorded meetings, we have public meeting notes. So, my feeling is, I think that we're okay to continue as we are. I think that the line that we've drawn thus far has been no manufacturers or resellers. And if we want to change that, how many folks in the committee do we need to have to get to the point that we feel comfortable, or that the committee feels comfortable inviting them in? So, Christine, if you want to start this as a shared doc and thinking about, again, like you and I can work on this separately offline, but at least like, let's start outlining what that looks like, and maybe we can have that ready for the next call to kind of review as a full body here. But it sounds like there's not really any objections to Nick. I'm not hearing right now. Going once, going twice. Anyone? All right, not going to over-engineer this one. So, yeah, it seems like Nick, continue to be welcome here, and we'll get that process started on, adding a little bit more formality and aligning to the committee as it keeps evolving in time. And appreciate everybody always contributing on how we can keep taking this to the next level.
cool.
I think wait, am I on mute?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. I think another question is, Nick, how do you feel about joining officially in that case?
Yeah, that's fine with me. As long as that's good with you guys. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. And there's just, I think to kind of everyone's point, it's just got to be a little bit more structuralized as far as, hey, these are the, not conflicts of interest, but these are the kind of relationships I have with the active projects I'm working on. So when the vote for those come up that are related, it's pretty obvious to everyone in some kind of public view that like, oh, it's not your turn to vote. But maybe that's a lot more complicated crap than normal. We just act like decent human beings for now and let that play out.
I mean, I love the idea of just like your own personal recusal. Whenever you see a possible conflict, you just say, you know, here's a possible conflict. It could be viewed publicly this way. So I recuse myself from this decision, and we can start there.
Yeah, I think there's just a couple more things. I agree with that, Jeremy. What about something I think everybody has probably been offered hotspots for free? What about recommending one manufacturer over another? Like, where do I mean, to me, it feels like we shouldn't do that publicly.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, and if this is the kind of little case study, is that I think SenseCap is, or whatever it is, Seed is going to send me a gateway that's going to go into this orphanage. Like for me, I'd rather the orphanage make the HNT. So it's kind of not to me, but it's going to go to me initially to set the whole thing up. So I don't know, maybe there's some kind of strict thing there.
Yeah, I have one from when I first started from Bobcat, and Seed also sent me one, which I'm not using. But yeah, I mean, so this is, you know, something I'm thinking about just right now. And then I had a call earlier today with a group, Hotspotty, who's making an app for potentially they're hoping to gain all the business of all the makers who are now going to make their own apps.
Yep.
And so, you know, I just said to them, I don't really think I can't be favoring them over someone else, even though there isn't someone else to favor. But how do we feel
there is, I think, and maybe that's the piece I'm going to bring in, because I'm an investor in Helium Vision, which is sort of a competitor to Hotspotty. They're doing similar things. I hadn't even thought of that as being a conflict of interest, but yeah, maybe everything gets listed out as far as like, hey, this is what I'm doing in the helium space.
I don't think that's personally, I don't think that it's a conflict. I just think it becomes a conflict if we're out there in the mod channel or in any of the other channels favoring one over another.
I mean, I generally feel like if you're actually serving on the committee, you should not be publicly endorsing any specific manufacturer's hotspot.
Absolutely.
It's okay if you use it, like, again, like we use rack hotspots, we're using Curlink, but I would not feel comfortable endorsing it, in a public way as sitting committee member.
Right. I mean, in the same way, yeah.
I've internalized that same ethic, Brad. I think since being on the committee, I have stayed away from anybody asking for recommendations of a hotspot, at least in public channels. So I had totally forgotten about that.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I agree with that.
Interesting. So how do you handle it when they're, one of the things I've seen is that, and it's pretty public, but maybe it looks like it's got heavier weight if a committee member or moderator is saying something about it, is that Bobcat has said like, hey, don't put our stuff outside. It's not temperature tolerant, whereas the rack is. And so when people ask me what hotspot to get, I haven't made a point of being super objective about it, but I've said, well, if you're going to put it outside, you're probably better off with a rack. They seem to do better outside.
I think that's totally fine, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that recommendation.
And also, I think you can add more substance to it. Like if you're going to put it outside, make sure you're using a hotspot that the manufacturer has endorsed for an outside use case, or
okay.
So I think it's a little bit different than saying, oh, Bobcats are the best hotspots out there by far, right?
Yep, that makes sense.
It's grounded in a technical requirement, and based on that technical requirement, in a flip side, if somebody says, hey, what's the best indoor hotspot to use? Your answer may be, well, they're all pretty similar, right? Or, something like that, without giving a specific recommendation on one, right?
Yeah, I see how this is a sticky thing. I wasn't saying we need to rule on this and tell everyone this, but I'm just saying I've noticed, I personally, because of my role, I've definitely stayed away from any one particular manufacturer. But Nick, I mean, your role in the community is really helping people set hotspots up, and you're and explaining things. So this may be different from you. I think if you're able to articulate why any particular hotspot makes sense for you, especially in like a scenario, that seems to be sort of the cool part about it. You say, well, for this reason and in this application, I recommend this or something. I don't think we have to avoid recommendation. Avoiding.
Yeah, I think Nick can clearly say, hey, for this use case, this is the key criteria you want. You want this kind of outdoor antenna or mounting, or you want PoE, or whatever. I mean, I don't think you should have to shy away from being a really great system integrator or consultant, but just make sure you give that technical requirement and feature as the framework in terms of what you're communicating.
That makes sense. That's pretty easy to do, because it's then people are coming back to you saying, you told me Bobcat was the best. It's like, no. Here's where they all lay out. Cool. Dig it. What's next?
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like this one needs more fleshing out, but we've been talking about it over a period of time. So I think I missed like the agenda item, or we had some sort of to do. What do you call that? Action item. Scott, did you bring that up?
Scott dropped off, right?
Oh, he did have to hop really early. Okay, I guess.
Yeah, but I thought he was going to make one of us, me.
Yeah, somebody.
Hold on.
I think it was Christina, actually.
He says in the chat. Okay, I mean, it doesn't matter, but he says in the chat he's leaving it in my hands. Okay, keep going. And
all right. So it looks like, I guess, on our agenda item is the. Oh, by the way, everyone, there is a Google Doc for the agenda. I highly recommend. I'm going to paste it in here in the chat. Feel free to add in there. So I'm just going off of what I see in here. So we have to set a date for this town hall meeting. So I guess Scott had the idea we'd continue the channel. I'm totally fine continuing the channel. But does everybody understand the purpose of this? Yeah.
So maybe not. So Scott mentioned a mock meeting. Is this internal first and then we invite the public?
No, it's a highly public. It's basically sit there and be grilled. Well, maybe not grilled, but
why does he call it a mock meeting? Because it's going to be real meeting.
A mock town hall.
Okay.
Meeting. Yeah,
all right.
That's the active keyword is town hall.
Okay.
And the idea is that maybe we'd all attend, or whoever can, but essentially answer questions live from the community. Anybody wants to pose a question. He's proposing that it be very moderated, that questions be submitted in advance, and then I guess that sort of limits what would be asked, but in the spirit of complete openness, we'd ask any reasonable question to be read out, and we would answer them, as we kind of do publicly in channels when we all kind of pop up from now and then. I know this latest Codex
fiasco
issue has definitely made me shy away from talking, because there's so many technical details I want to get hammered out first, and that wasn't fun. I do want to go back to just chatting to people occasionally, not having to worry that I am under some secrecy order to help. So I'm glad that that's done.
What do you have in mind for date-wise or time frame?
I think that's open for us to kind of vote on, but we should do it sooner rather than later.
Okay.
And I think that's that's the kind of the agenda item. I don't think we can decide on it now. It's kind of a waste of our time to do now, but as long as we all understand the point of it. Sophie.
Oh, I just wanted to say, Scott proposed that we do it the week after next. And I also second that we move quickly through this, because Lewis is not here the whole time and we need him for the light hotspot discussion.
Okay, so the week after next would be November 8th if you went straight 2 weeks from now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm okay with that. Or we can kind of do an informal chat poll, but let's everybody cool with at least that week, sometime in that week.
So, yeah, it kind of depends what time, but yes, sometime. Obviously it's going to be hard to align Europe, US, and China all on.
Yeah, I'm going to rely on maybe Scott's knowledge of time zones, and he seems to organize timings pretty well. So, we'll try to find something that's the least offensive for I don't know. We always, China is the one that gets, in Asia, it seems to get really,
Yeah.
always has to wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning, no matter what it is. But I'm fine leaving it up to Scott, as long as we're just technically on board with the idea. And that week. It seems like we all are.
Yep.
Cool. So does anybody else want to, I have some agenda items I wanted to add. Does anybody else, now that you've seen the doc, I want to push mine to the end. It's not super important. Well, I do want to talk about the codex thing, particularly the next steps we're going to have to do. And it's gargantuan. I may just end up doing them, but it requires a SQL database and then communicating with Helium Inc. and saying, hey, we'd like to take over their onboarding key, blah, blah, blah. Anybody have time to go over that?
Yeah, let's go to light hotspots so that Louis
Okay.
can lead the meeting.
Awesome. Go for it, Liz.
Yeah.
I think I'm just here to be questioned. I don't know.
What you, me, and Cokes were on a email or a thread that it sounded like we're getting ready to send light hotspot messaging to the community. And Cokes had asked for me or Christina to send an email to everyone who wants to do light hotspot auditing, that we're going to be ready as soon as some new firmware is ready. And Scott put a break on it and said, we as the mock need to discuss what our messaging is because there's going to be supply chain issues. So can we just start with you telling us what you know about the timing?
As far as timing, I think we're still messaging and targeting Q1 for when light hotspots will be able to earn just as much as miners, as full hotspots. Currently, like I can tell you, a test I set up Friday was a gateway with a device connected to it, or a light hotspot with a device connected to it, acting in a state channel with an ECC 608 and just doing the work. So that's based on the results so far, I've been just puttering away, and that's great. The big final milestone will be making them POC capable. And there's a couple of things that need to fall into place for that. One that is slightly less related direct, or essentially the full hotspots currently construct challenges, and that's not that feasible for the light hotspots. So there needs to be a HIP that transfers that capability over to likely validators. And we need to kind of discuss that and make sure everyone's on board and implement that change. So that'll probably be the biggest blocker, because it seems like the actual light hotspot software is moving along pretty good. It's just that re-architecture is a change in how earnings are done and POC is done, and so it needs a little bit more. It needs to like kind of go through that formal HIP process essentially. So yeah, that's kind of the status and what's blocking it from going live. But given all that, I think Q1 is very much in the cards, hopefully on the early side. And I have, this wasn't really asked, you didn't necessarily ask me this, but I have heard, at least from one, if not many manufacturers, that they'd like to really understand the timeline better and start getting in the audit pipeline and start kind of rejiggering their supply chain to adjust to that, because in hardware, that's not a long time. And they don't want to be carrying all these full hotspots that don't earn any better, and having other people selling, so I think there's that piece to things too that I've been hearing about, at least.
Yeah. So Louis, so my question is, so it sounds, I think Coco or somebody updated it somewhere, and it says it's kind of like February was kind of when you guys were targeting for, having all the pieces in place to do full POC. But because it's a bit unpredictable, and because obviously software can be updated remotely and dynamically, the question I have is, can we allow light hotspot manufacturers to pre-certify, pre-audit the hardware? Because we can check the ECC configuration, we can check the channel plan, they can go through FCC. All of these things while the final pieces of the POC software get worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can start auditing sooner.
Yeah. So then, my proposal would be, so these manufacturers can start to send in their hardware to us in January, December, January, get pre-approval. We don't necessarily have to allow them to start pre-sales or shipping, but they can at least then get their manufacturing lines staged, get warehousing done, right? Get these units kind of distributed, ready to fulfill orders. And then when you guys finally kind of get to the final state where this is approved, then that manufacturer, all they have to do is do a firmware update to the unit they had already sent into audit. Then we can verify that the unit actually does POC, and that their firmware update mechanism goes, and then they can release sales. But everything's ready to ship, so customers can start to get stuff, 2 days later, and hopefully make the community a lot happier. Does that make sense? Does that seem plausible?
Yeah, I think so. One thing to know is that the Light Gateway application actually has an updater built into it. So that's even so essentially, I think we can make some small changes to the current audit process that essentially, do the same identical ECC verification and its proper integration with the Light Gateway code that's testable today as of last week, essentially. And then maybe just verify that the updater can update. Once those things are proven out, I think we could be auditing. Yeah. And we're kind of like, there's no real blockers from doing that at the moment, I'd say. Yeah, it's just a question of testing. I guess there's no protocol. I need to think of a protocol for testing the updater, but other than that, yeah, we're kind of like, we'd be ready for it very soon. I'd say, hopefully November is very much on the table, I'd say, pending, there's all the other things that come into play of like maybe the backlog of full hotspot audits. But as far as technically having a protocol for auditing light hotspots, I think we're on the cusp of it.
Yeah, I think letting these start to trickle in November to December makes sense for us and for the manufacturers versus having them all like waiting when everything's totally done and then it's a bottleneck. Yep. So the question I have, kind of taking the next step here is, do you actually allow any pre-sales prior to proving out that the POC actually works? And I'm more.
Well, POC ends up, once we've proven out the stuff in the hardware audit, it's all software after that, and that will be ready when it's ready. It's not in the hardware vendor. Like once we've proven the hardware does what the hardware vendor says it does.
I'm just concerned about consumer expectation, delay, all the bad blood.
The worst nightmare is if a manufacturer gets approved for a light hotspot, has everything go well, deploy it, start selling it, people buy these, and the final milestone hasn't landed in the blockchain.
I agree.
And that's the thing we all have to worry about is, how do we set it up? We say, well, you can get audited and everything, but there's a final step where you can actually approve sales, but maybe pre-sales is allowed for some number of weeks before we think it's going to land. Very tricky, right? And that, I think we're on the same page. Like, what do we do?
I'm very concerned about the community expectation and having another disappointment. What I'm thinking is we allow the manufacturers to get pre-audited, let them stage inventory everywhere, but they're not allowed to ship it until Helium knows that the code is good, that the new validator thing is working, all the POC stuff works. Because the last thing I want is to have customers get this thing and then we think it's going to work in 2 weeks, but then it becomes 2 more months, right? That's my opinion, but maybe we can come back and visit that.
I think there's another issue as well there, that from a retail point of view, if a company gets approved for light hotspots, does the retail market suddenly drop buying the full miners and rush to get the cheaper light hotspots? And then we may end up with a bottleneck there, but then other manufacturers may end up with a load of cancellations and things like that. So I think from a retail point of view, we're really going to have to, everything we decide, I think it's going to have to be really transparent with the public to say, look, we're here, light spots are just over this hill, it's coming, and just try and the manufacturers are in a position to tell people, oh, we're this far along. The MOC is transparent with, these guys are this far along, because I think the retail element from a consumer, I mean, I buy hotspots and put them in, and obviously I'm looking at light hotspots, you know, as the next stage.
well,
I've stopped buying mains now, and I'm waiting for light hotspots to come in.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think there's just a ton of people who are still waiting for their full miner, and there's, I mean, from the manufacturer's perspective, you know, they need to fulfill those orders. Like having everybody cancel full miner orders will cause a whole nother ripple of dysfunction in the supply chain. So that's what I'm saying. Like I want to let the manufacturers stage miner light inventory, get through pre-audit, but I'm reluctant to turn on the, you can go buy these until it's actually working, because I think that sets a, you know, low risk consumer experience, but it also gives time for all the full miner inventory to clear out as much as possible before the market turns to the new product.
So here's probably a pretty easy suggestion. We kind of take the current rule. So you won't necessarily be approved for pre-sale until Helium Inc. tells us, hey, it's gonna land. You know, we ask them, let us know when you feel it's officially landed. Then we say, okay, everyone who has passed your audit for light gateways is now approved for light gateway sales. So we can get everything going. They can start doing their audits. They can start doing their manufacturing. We'll try to give them updates about when we think it's going to land as guidance, because they're probably going to ask us, but ultimately it'll be up to them. The only gating factor we do is to just say that no pre-sales or sales at all until the flag day of when Helium Inc. tells us that the blockchain's ready.
I agree. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think perhaps we should consider trying to get the approval of, you know, a group at a time. If, you know, like get 3 or 4 to that stage where we can say, right, these 3 guys have passed all the tests and these guys are now approved, and kind of then the market can decide which way they want to go or which company they want to buy from. Right. I just see a whole raft of problems if one passes first. And, you know,
yeah, I think we're going to avoid that, Phil, by just simply saying it doesn't matter who passes first. Everyone has to wait until flag day.
I think that's another benefit of what you're suggesting, because that way, whoever gets through the audit first doesn't have an advantage. Everybody's kind of waiting. So all the
pre-sale embargo
manufacturers kind of get through pre-audit, you know, and then when Helium says, hey, it's approved, it's actually a great marketing thing for Helium, you know, that they fixed a lot of problems. Like all of a sudden now there's multiple manufacturers with actual inventory of product ready to ship when Helium says it's approved. Right?
Yeah, definitely the way to go, I think.
Right now we only have 10 manufacturers who are proposing light hotspots.
I suspect there's more in the wings.
Yeah, agreed. But compared to like 70 or so with full.
Cool. Well, I think we're almost like unanimous. We can vote it in the channel, but it sounds like we're okay with audits starting. Lewis, what do you think? We kind of need guidance on what the minimum requirements are for the hardware for a light hotspot. Maybe we have those already, but they're clearly not the same as a full hotspot.
Yeah, let me double check what we do have as minimum requirements. I've found, just anecdotally, I think it's very hard not to meet the requirements if you run Linux. The only thing we've run into is perhaps flash space for running the actual binary and pulling on an update in concurrently. Yeah. So, but let me see if I can get some hard specs on that. But from a processing and RAM standpoint, it's really hard not to meet the requirements as far as I know.
Yeah, that's the only thing I think that we're really concerned about, is that we set a standard for the audits to say that you pass or fail based on what we expect. Again, that's the problem. What we expect the actual usage is going to be. It'll be pretty good though. I mean, we can actually test the light gateway on there. We just won't have some of the gRPC things for POC, and hopefully those, we can kind of take a risk and say, those aren't likely to add much to the spec. So yeah, if you can get back to us with your idea, and we'll all kind of vote on it. Sound like you're telling us what it's going to be.
Right.
I also think they need to, let's make them go through FCC testing or CE before, again, they send it in, to not waste time.
Is that any different from the current full hotspot?
No, I'm just saying, let's just make sure that that's.
Okay.
I mean, and I guess make sure that they actually have a test report. Like, I think some of them, so if you tell me, it seems like some send it in before they actually have their test back.
Not anymore.
Okay.
Sounds like that's been fixed.
I think we've gotten kind of like policing all of the FCC stuff.
Cool. Well, I think that satisfies all our light hotspot questions, Les.
So we're gonna try to maybe have formal specs for light hotspots for MOC review, and then perhaps the diffs to the audit of like what steps are changing to what, and just kind of get some technical review from you guys on that, and then we're good to go, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And yeah, I think once, if everybody agrees, once Lewis gives us the specs and the go ahead, then we would send out an email to the makers to let them know, but not before, because it'll be hard to answer questions that are all going to come in about the specs, you know, at different times.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Do you have anything else you need us to know, Liz? I mean, you can stay on, but if you were like itching to drop off, you can.
Nope. Good luck. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right. Any other agenda items before I go into the coding stuff?
No, I'm just gonna, I think it's related, Jeremy, but we started this OEM ethics and expectations doc. So just curious to just cue that up again. Are we gonna work on it and finish it, or what's the thoughts?
Oh yeah, no, we do need to do that. Because that's part of the things that we resolved to do after we revealed what Codex' suspension is going to be about. So, yeah, who do we vote has to do it? I mean, I guess I'll do it. I have the most.
Well, I mean, there's a draft. I mean, Sophie sent it out. I put some stuff in there. I think a few people had started to look at it, but I think maybe just a clarification on if we're going to finish it, have people contribute to it.
We kind of need what I'm going to call a whip, someone who like owns this task to push us to complete it. I would love, Brad, if you're comfortable just saying, hey, look, I think it's ready in a form, let's vote on it, or pushing us to like fill in details every day.
Yeah, so I guess I put some stuff in there, in the initial kind of very, very, very rough outline. I guess I would appreciate everybody's taking a look and just, this is heading in the right direction. Like we need to add these things, that's missing. And then I'm happy to continue to try to polish it. But before I spend more time on it, I want to make sure like there's this general alignment on the direction that's being outlined.
Yeah, no, what I was just suggesting is that you're the one who continues to push us to like add our own. Not that you have to keep working on it, but someone needs to represent it. And I feel I'm dropping the ball with all these other things. So
okay, so I'm happy to keep pushing as long as we all agree it needs to be done.
I totally agree. I feel it needs to be done. I mean, it's basically outlining, hey, everyone, you've seen what we've talked to Codex about. This applies to everyone. Here's the expectations we expect every manufacturer to have.
Yeah, but I just want to raise like, and it's for discussion, and everybody can, maybe by what they contribute, they can weigh in on this. But you look at some of the negative chatter on the community forums about just people not fulfilling orders, how orders are fulfilled. I think there's stuff that we're going to put in here that are not enforceable. It's not like the DY is going to police it. But to at least there's a reference to say, like, this is the expectation. And I just keep coming back to disclosure.
Yeah.
Like, manufacturers should disclose. And I think I put something in there about, what percentage of the units they're being manufactured are going to insiders.
Yeah. I mean,
Right?
Definitely the community is interested in that. Individual purchasers are very interested in that. They want to feel like they're on equal footing.
So I guess when
orders.
we look at it beyond Kotex and then, as we move, as like, the Helium is stepping back further from providing what's needed to bring a product to market, like mobile app. And, so manufacturers should have a stated strategy and a commitment to support a mobile app for at least 2 years?
Yeah, clearly these are the details I hate to think about, but
So again, I don't think we can police these if a manufacturer ultimately doesn't live up to these expectations, but let's at least make them like we do in their HIP, disclose and commit to something, right?
Yeah, just be aware, since we do have exerted this sort of policing power, we have to enumerate where we feel comfortable policing and not, because we've shown that we can actually shut a manufacturer down, and I want to use that very rarely and don't want to be pushed into having to do it again. So yeah, I'm fine in spelling all those out, especially if we have like, here are things we expect, but honestly are not going to police on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me describe, now I see you're there in the document, what has to be done for Codex. And I think I'm just going to be the one doing it because it's just a lot of technical stuff and I know a little bit of all the moving pieces, but I want to give you guys an idea because it is a few hours, if not a few days of work. So Codex has gotten back to us and given us the details of all ordering information of quantity 20 or less, which is what we asked. And I actually think we said 20 or more was the cutoff. I kind of made it 20 or less the cutoff, meaning if you bought 20 units, you're still within the individual purchaser role. That was sort of my executive decision. Everyone is just aware that's kind of what I said to them. So they've come back and given us spreadsheet data of the format that I asked them for. I put up very detailed requirements saying, all right, you've given us the original specifications, which talks about all the distributors and all the orders out there. I need to cross-reference all the data they're now sending me to make certain it's in the original order list. Because that was our scheme. If you remember, we'd asked them to first reveal all of their pending orders from all distributors and lock that down first. And then we revealed what the onboarding rules are. That way there would be less opportunity to game or restructure the orders beforehand. So the technical task is merging these two pieces of data. Now that they're coming back with the onboarding keys, which we ultimately need, I have to go through and make certain every one of these onboarding key records fits within the scheme they've published. So it's actually, I'm just going to use a SQL database, some sort of relational database to do this. And the effort involved is taking the original spreadsheet and converting it into records, cleaning it up so that it has keys that can be used in a database in a proper way, taking out the human fudging factors, making all the dates of the same unified format. And that is just grunt work, but it's kind of what we've pinned ourselves into doing when we made our ruling, since we're going to take over, require them to only allow onboarding from particular records. I'm just letting you all know that's what I'm working on. In addition to all the other things I'm working on. So I expect to start working on that today. It's going to take days, honestly, to get it done. But after that, we're going to have to also ask probably Coco to revoke Codex's what's called their API key for putting onboarding records into the onboarding server, and ask her to replace it with one that we generate. We should all have access to it technically. And I will begin the process of stuffing in the new records for what they're allowed to onboard. Once we've officially taken control over their API key and they can't mess with it, we can actually start the we can restore their maker key because they don't have access to their maker key. We do. And we also have to ask Helium Inc. not to give them access to their maker key or this whole scheme unravels. So that's, I guess it's more of a status item for that. Any questions?
Just a comment, Jeremy, when I get back next on Monday, if you would like a little bit of help with the grunt work, I'm happy to.
Oh my goodness,
throw in
yes, of
some
course.
time.
I'm
Yeah.
actually kind of asking for volunteers, but
Yes, I'm volunteering, but I'm not
Great.
volunteering until Monday because I'm on vacation for the
I
rest of the
understand.
week.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to get it done before then, but chances are we'll run into that Monday and I'll need your help anyway, so thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, please let me know.
Does everybody kind of understand why I have to do what we're doing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Cool. And the final thing is I would like to open the mock Discord channel back up to public where it originally was. The only reason we moved it to private is I asked Scott to do so because we were getting all of these allegations about what was going on with Codex, and they were allegations. I didn't want to start a firebrand thing, especially digging into servers and getting data or asking Helium to get it for me. I wanted that data to remain private because it is kind of private. So, but ultimately we should be as open as possible. So I'd like to have we could probably keep the current channel private, just because there's all this stuff we'd have to go back and scrub of the private data that we don't want out there. But opening up a new channel to be our official main communication channel, and then we just sort of adopt a rule saying we should very rarely move to the private channel. If we do, it should be for specific reasons, and always checking ourselves, say, all right, this is a public discussion and not a private discussion. But just want everyone to be on board with that, that idea that generally nothing needs to be in the private channel unless it's allegations that are unproven or like private data that we're asking Helium Inc. to give us about a manufacturer.
Is there a reason, Jeremy, why we don't have an MOC channel in the Helium Discord channel? You know, like you see all the Cortex discussions ended up taking over the DEWI channel, didn't it? The DUI channel.
Yeah.
And you just, maybe there should be a lot of people were venting, of course there were, but yeah, it kind of clogged up a few channels that it probably didn't really need to be in.
I think that
that's an idea.
The answer is that, DUI gives us the resources to manage the stuff, but Helium Inc. runs the Helium Discord as it is right now. So we could ask Helium to do it. They are within the rights to say no. I'm sure they'd probably do it and let us. But if that's a bottleneck to community participation, I think it's worth talking about. The idea, though, is that people are free to join the DUI Discord. It is technically open, and only some channels are locked off, like the one that we did under governance. So that's the reasoning. I think maybe if we, I don't know, it's a lot of work to ask him to do it. I'm still comfortable doing it on the DUI Discord, and then if we really, maybe we can just do a better job saying, look, once we have the channel open again, you can watch what we're talking about on the DUI Discord. And the DUI channel on Helium is a free-for-all, whereas on Discord, on the DUI Discord, it's read only by the public.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely noticed when I got the courage to go back and watch the DUI channel, it was just such a mess.
Like a trash fire over there.
Yeah, people get angry, and I think part of it is just not being able to see what's going on, and that's why I really want to have a public channel at least again, starting on the DUI server, and that will help. So as long as everyone's okay generally opening that, and just to keep it easy and not have to go like, oh my goodness, what are we going to go scrub on the messages that have private data, just starting a new channel and keeping the current private one private, but we'll have like a bot in there, or just someone who pings us, hey, you're taking a lot of time talking on this one private channel, please make it public. And I think that's it for me in terms of stuff on the agenda. I see. Wait, let's see. Do we have actual like decisions we should do here while we have the video? Although we're missing a few of our members now. Why don't we move on to like reminding some of the async stuff that we're going to have to do? Registration, voting. So Deeper, we all need to vote on Deeper. Is everyone aware? Remember Deeper? I do.
I think we discussed Deeper before, didn't we, at the very outset? So I think as long as everybody reads the notes and everything else, I think we're pretty much there, aren't we?
Yeah, I think this is a great forum for us to share any concerns too. I value everyone's like concerns about any one particular manufacturer. This one is, if I recall, Deeper does have another kind of blockchain associated with it. It's not in the Wi-Fi space, so unlike RevoFi. Yeah.
And Deeper is using theirs for serving ads.
Okay. I'm not going to jump in whether I like that. I mean, that's their blockchain. But
I also want to say, even though again we should judge not emotionally, Deeper has been amazing to work with, unlike the other one.
Fair enough. It's helpful to know what the relationship
really
is
transparent, really responsive, really nice. Just a pleasure, really.
Cool. Well, we don't have, we can't really vote on it. We don't have enough people. I feel like we should all at least on any vote, it should be everyone votes in. I don't think we're at the point where we need a quorum, but we would, we're clearly not meeting it now, so I'm going to defer the vote. But just a reminder that the vote is open on the channel, right? And I'm going to commit to looking at their audit and proposal again. As you can all have seen me do, I'm such a picky person. Like when I look at the proposal and then what they actually provide wasn't the same as proposal, I'll continue to stick on manufacturers to explain why they diverted. And I think a lot of that case is I'm just looking at old versions, but trying to tell everyone why I appear to be so picky on that. So I want to make certain that when they propose something, what they actually ship should match the proposal, or they should always tell us along the way when they're needing to make a change. And some changes may require recertification or revoting. We'll have to talk about that later. But so far, I think we've been okay.
Yeah, I'm not obviously going to vote on it because I did the audit, but it would be great if everybody, because it's been kind of hanging around for a little bit longer than it should be.
Why do you feel you can't vote on it?
Because I did the audit.
That gives you just more knowledge, though, about whether they're.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you could articulate a bit more why you feel it's improper. I'm fine
I
either way.
feel like the auditor and the approver should be different people.
Okay.
And then voting should be done by people who, like, I'm really wrapped up in this. I've been working on this for a while.
Oh, so you would feel like if you didn't approve it, you would feel some internal pang?
I mean, no, probably not internal pang. I'm not like that nice, but I think that I probably have a bias. Of course I have a bias. I've been working with these people like pretty closely for, I don't know, about 3 weeks now.
Okay, fair enough. So you're recusing yourself. That's
Yeah.
fine. I don't think it's a general, but I'm definitely
Yeah.
pursuing it.
Maybe not in a general, because many audits just go, like they just work the way they're supposed to. Although I'd say that's about 10% of them.
Can I ask you a quick question then, Sophie?
Yeah.
On the deep, are they going to change have they changed the antenna socket to align with FCC, or they're leaving it as SMA? I think it was. Have they passed that problem?
I was just saying earlier, I think to Patrick, that I haven't had a chance to tell them. We give our policy, or I don't know if there's really a policy, but has been, I generally give almost every single manufacturer who goes through FCC a warning that they won't pass FCC with their antenna. Today, Deeper provided their certificates for FCC.
And they passed with the SMA?
Apparently, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm of the same opinion. As long as they get the regulatory body passing, I don't feel it's up to me to decide SMA or not SMA. Right. Technically, reverse polar SMA is just as hard to find a connector for regular SMA now. The whole point of the FCC Part 15, and I'm sure the CE certification around this issue, has been really a dead issue for really almost 20 years. So it doesn't serve anybody's purpose, but I'm just okay if the regulatory body says okay, then it's fine. I agree. Our policy should be to warn them, and that's all we should do. We should help them understand what's likely to happen. But ultimately, it's the regulatory body's call, and if they said okay, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
You would think by now, with the amount of hotspots, that the SMA would be harder to find than the other ones now.
It practically is. And maybe I should elucidate one more point, which is that the FCC does not do these audits. They don't do the actual paperwork. All of these are done by third-party labs that you hire, who are under FCC guidelines about what to pass. But it very well could be that you can shop around and find a particular lab that will more likely pass you if you have an SMA or not. So this is another area where it's lax enough, and we should be prepared to understand why this happens. But from my perspective on the mock, I don't feel I care either way what connector they have, as long as they pass the certification.
Yeah, I feel like it's out of scope for us to police that, but it's nice. I mean, just like I have said to vendors, like if they have like things that clip into each other and they come loose, I mean, I'll give comment on the way that they've designed something too. As a warning, it ship came loose. So you might not want to use that next time, something like that, but.
Cool. Looks like.
Yeah. So again, if everyone could vote today, that would be great. I'd love to wrap this up before I leave.
Cool. I think I can do that. So to keep going, there's stuff on here that you probably typed in, Sophie.
Oh, I typed in a whole bunch of stuff.
The next thing is general hardware. So can you explain? It looks like we're asking if we should change the policy of the third-party security chip to. Can you explain?
Yeah, this actually comes from somebody else's comment, and it also falls under the Semtech SX 1302 buyback if we change to SX 1303 plus GPS. So these two things arrived together by one of you, I think. So let's start with the Semtech buyback. Is that a thing?
Semtech buyback. What are you guys
What?
talking about?
I don't know what that is.
And there is no requirement to use the 1302. So just for everybody's knowledge, the 1302 and 1303 are identical, except the 1303, they both support a GPS chip, by the way. The 1303 adds a high resolution precise timestamping mode that has some special capabilities in it. So they're pin for pin, so for everything that's being done in any Helium miner today, the chips are 100% interchangeable. Most of the concentrator cards that are being shipped today do not populate the GPS on the daughter card, and there's no requirement in the HIP-19 guidelines for a customer to include GPS. So if these things are changing, we should start to message that to the community that they should migrate to not only add a GPS chip, but also move to 1303s with precise timestamping, which could be used to help improve locationing and maybe POC. I do see that, but but the only way it works is if the GPS has got a signal, which implies that it's by a window or outdoors. So.
Okay, and I believe that are you the one who updated the hardware specifications?
I sent you a message, Sophie, because I saw your message come out with that kind of implied that people should use the 1303 and GPS, and I sent you a message kind of outlining what I just said, because I think that will create an uproar in the supply chain if we sent that out, because I think almost everybody or the majority of people right now are going after 1302s.
Yeah, that's what we've seen, or what I've seen.
But there's no reason unless Helium Engineering has changed something. There's no reason why we should prefer a 1302 over a 1303 as the MOC.
I had a message from Cokes, who I wish that she was here. So I'll just say she sent a message that said that Helium engineers were recommending that we move to SX 1303 plus GPS.
Yeah, and I think the reasoning being is that we would like to start getting the whole Helium network to have some of these advanced timestamping capabilities. That's advantageous for some LoRaWAN users.
So I mean, clearly the precise timestamping is a great feature, and I think there can be utility. The limitation, and I mean this Patrick, I'm sure smiling because I'm rehashing a bunch of Semtech stuff. The limitation is you have to have an outdoor unit to have the GPS lock to get the precise clock out of it that makes this thing work. So so it'd be great to have Helium Engineering provide more guidance, but I would be very cautious for us to go tell anybody right now, like, you got to convert to the 1302, because like it'll totally mess up the supply chain, which is already barely hanging on for all of 2022.
We should be adamant. This is not a requirement. It'd be hellacious to ask to make this a requirement. I don't want to do it, but like there should be some value in choosing it in the future. We're not quite there yet to help elucidate or tell people.
But only if it's going to be only if it's going to be a GPS enabled unit. Like there's no value really, I think, in adding a GPS to a 1302 unit, right? Because that you don't get the precise time stamping necessarily.
Yeah.
So I think the guidance and because most of the market is based off of these concentrator cards, most people aren't, these, particularly our current batch of OEMs isn't really doing chip down design. So, really the message should be going to the concentrator card manufacturers. So the seeds and the racks and the, who's the other guy, Rising HF, whoever, that are doing the concentrator cards, that those concentrator cards may start to want to populate the GPS and have an option to put a GPS antenna on the concentrator card.
Yeah. I just love there be messaging saying, look, we're just very vague right now, but we do know in the future it's quite possible there would be a new class of hotspots that have this feature that might be able to earn more in some way. We don't know how it's going to work yet, but
I'm fine with that. But I just we need to be clear in what's in the document that Sophie's sending out, because for anybody that's in mode for 2022 with an indoor unit or even most of the outdoor units, it's not a requirement.
Yep. Very true. So what's the buyback then? We didn't really hit that.
There is no buyback.
There's
Patrick,
no-
is that
yeah, no,
buyback?
I have no idea what that means.
No,
I'm just gonna put not happening. Let's move on.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So Sophie,
There is going to be a price increase, but that's a different topic.
Exactly. Everything's NCNR in the entire electronic supply chain now, right? So,
Yes.
Sophie, is there something more I can do to send? I sent you that blurb. Do you want me to write something, or Patrick and I to work on something to clarify this?
A blurb to clarify would be great, and we can put that out in our November update.
Okay.
I think that it simmered down, and then I got also something you probably were all copied on. Microchip was pretty annoyed that something went out with their part numbers.
It's just a part number.
I sent out their part number, whatever. Yes.
I think we figured out what's going on, and they're back in. For some reason they thought the part number was like secret sauce, and so I respect that. I don't think it was a huge mistake. Honestly, we were trying to push this, not push, but like let people know that this is something they can do, and I thought Microchip would be happy that they have this new supply chain open. So, but I think that's all been solved. I don't think there's any issue left with it.
Okay. And then do you think that we should accept, I guess probably made in, if there's third-party security chips that are identical to the ECC, but are not the ECC?
So I've thought about this. As long as it's functionally requirement and as long as it's functionally equivalent. And when I say functional, I mean, part of that is how secure is it? Can you pull the keys out? Which isn't really something you would say is a functional requirement in terms of something you can test against the test scripts, but it's kind of on the onus of the applicant to show us that this is the latest, that this has undergone some of the heavier security requirements that the 608 has. Things like side channel resistance, which I'm familiar with, and laser glitching, and all the other really hardcore reverse engineering methods. We want to see confidence that the chip is going to behave the same way as a 608 in security space, not just from its programming space. It's one thing to serve the needs of the program talking to it. It's another thing to serve the needs of the network to make certain the key can't be pulled out. So there have been cases where I've seen clones or something being offered, and I think I've told Sophie, like, I don't know about this one, or a case where someone asked to use a 508, which has a known vulnerability. We said, no, that's not going to work. So I think our general policy is for the secure module, it has to be proven secure. There has to be some confidence in it. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to run my own secure module. It'll be functionally equivalent to the 608, but that's not enough at all. They have to show that it has undergone some serious auditing to the level that the 608 has. That's my opinion.
I agree. I mean, it has to come from a reputable manufacturer.
Yeah, but we're not quite specifying what a reputable manufacturer is.
No, but I'm saying, just because they say it's functionally equivalent and they show a data sheet from some unknown manufacturer that shows it's a clone, doesn't necessarily mean it's a check the mark, you're in, right?
Yeah.
The MOC needs to look at that specific device of the manufacturer.
And we're not being unusually strange here. This is the requirements I've sort of set forth if you want to use something other than the 608, right? If you're going to use Trust Zone or TPM, we have an existing questionnaire, which maybe we should start shipping that. If people want to use a different chip, they have to answer that questionnaire. And some of those questions may be hard for them to answer if they are going with a variant that hasn't been tested, but it is in the questionnaire.
Yeah, we give them the questionnaire when it's something, when it's a different security module. So can I move on to the next thing?
I'm fine, yeah.
How do we feel about kits being sold? So this has come up a couple times, but PyCom recently asked if they can sell something that has everything but the CPU.
So here's my perspective on why people do this. When you sell a kit, you're no longer required to get radio certification, because end kits they can get around regulatory body certification rules. So whether they've told you this or not, behind the scenes is one of the things that is advantageous for a manufacturer to do. The public, of course, would probably love it. Not everyone would, but there's a lot of people scrambling for hotspots who would do this. So I see this as one way of relieving supply issues, but also one way of someone skirting their responsibility. And we should probably think about this, try to rule. It's not as straightforward as it looks.
Okay.
But we could kind of say, oh yeah, go ahead, as long as you get FCC certification, and they may balk. If we ask them to do that and they balk, then we clearly have kind of found why they're doing it. I think it may, in fact, be hard for them to get a certification as a kit, because they have to prove the end unit. They have to prove the whole package. And if you're saying, I'm only selling it as pieces, they'll say, why are you getting certification? You don't need it. Technically, from the security side, I think it's basically fine. It can run into a little bit of quality issues for the end user. In kit form, there's going to be a few failures if people can't put it together right. Is that a thing that we as the mock care about, the end customer experience? It gets into what is our role? But from a security side, I think it can be done. It doesn't really affect the security part of it. It's who uses these RPi CM4 right now? Nebra does, not Nebra. Syncrobit has a CM4. Who else uses it? I think Seed might be. This is essentially, imagine these two manufacturers selling you their hardware, except it comes in two boxes and you put the final assembly yourself. It would be almost exactly the same thing. So I don't know. I would love for you to go back to them and say, how are you going to get regulatory certification? If you can do that, I think that'd be very enlightening, Sophie, if you're comfortable.
Yep. Yeah, I can ask. I mean, it's come up a couple of times where people have asked about it, and then it's moved on to where they have their actual hotspot. That's not a kit. But
how would that be audited though? From because we had the issues before where the increase of RAM and things like that to make sure they performed well enough for the blockchain. So how would you audit each kit as it came in, or how would they pass the MOC audit?
I feel like
I kind of feel like the kit thing should be revisited with light miners only.
Why is that?
Just because it's going to be much easier to build a kit for a light miner than it is to do what's needed for a full miner right now.
Isn't it the same amount of parts, just less memory?
Well, again, I guess when you say a kit, it's like assemble it and then what firmware control does the kit owner have?
I think they'll be asked to download an image and burn an SD card.
Okay.
So the light miner will still have an SD card?
No, I take that back. Okay. The CM4 has to be programmed via USB. So that is pretty hard to answer. I don't know how they're going to tell people to download, make their own CM4. You have to program it, and the programming process for a CM4 is not a walk in the park. In fact, with the CM4, you need, how in the world are they going to do that? You need the IO dev board to program it, because it comes
That's
with
how
super.
they're, without getting too into detail on this public call, there is a additional, like a daughter card that has a SD card. And so you have to download and burn a new image. That's how you program it.
Yeah, I'm very curious why they decided to go this route. I think they're trying to end run around regulatory certification. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're very innocent. I think it could be done.
Question from, just to be clear, this was a question from them. I am nearly done with their audit of a regular module that comes complete with CM4.
I see.
I just had to program it a few times.
Yeah. I'm technically okay with it, but we would have to understand the implications, especially if they're saying, yeah, you're right, we're not going to have regulatory certification. Do we balk at that? Or we say,
I mean, I think we want to have regulatory certification, yes. Because that's an additional, it's just an additional check besides our audit.
Yeah, but to get, so again, there's different types of regulatory certification. You can get certified as a module, but that's not really a product level certification, right? You really need to go get a product level certification, which means you have to be running the full firmware image of whatever you think you're going to be doing.
Yeah, and like the case has to arrive assembled. The end user should not be asked and cannot be asked to put it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may be a major hurdle for them. And if we're sticklers about it has to be a product certified, that may be all they need to know, and then they'll just find out, difficult to do.
Yeah, I don't see the value of the kit here.
Okay, moving on to the next and last thing with our 4 minutes.
Totally
kind of is the same thing. I'm just bringing it up because I wanted to just re-bring it up. We have been voting on manufacturers as FCC pending or CE pending or other radio certifications pending. Does everyone still feel okay about that?
And the alternative would be?
Wait until they're done. Because I actually feel okay about it. It is some extra work to go back and make sure that, to make sure that Helium hasn't placed them on the website, to make sure that no one is doing pre-orders, to make sure no distributors have put their name everywhere before they have any radio certifications. But what is happening since we started doing this pending is that they wait for the audit to be done, then they go to certification, which is probably why we're seeing all those SMA connectors, and also why I'm seeing a lot of hand soldered parts, honestly.
Yeah. So Sophie, I think this is the point I was bringing up earlier, because I kind of thought that there was this gap. Well, why not just make everybody, before they submit to the audit, part of the requirement is you send in your test results and your certification.
Yeah. That's what I think. I was hoping to discuss with everybody what we think about that.
It seems like it's going to save you time and energy, and it makes them be more committed and have a more production ready product before you have to look at it.
It takes away a bit of confusion as well for the consumer's point of view, a bit of confusion that, they're approved by the MOC, but we're waiting for this, and not. So I agree with that. We should probably put a date on it from when the guys, because there's probably guys in the pipeline. We should probably put a date on, say, from the end of November, we will not accept audits until they've got the FCC or the CE or whatever, whichever. Yeah. Just give them a bit of a bridge in time, maybe.
Yeah, if that's a recovery date, I don't know.
I mean, let's ask the other question. By doing it, are we really helping, the OEM? Are we helping any product to market faster? Is there a reason why we should go out of our way to do this?
It does help the vendor who they're all nervous about the hardware audit. they shouldn't be because it's public, but people are nervous about it. And they're worried that they're going to pay that, whether it's 11,000, how much is it for FCC certification now?
Yeah.
The thousands of
Technically
dollars,
market
they're
rate.
worried they're going to have to pay it twice. Because
Well, but just there's nothing we're doing that would force them that would actually determine if they passed or failed their FCC RF testing.
Right. Agree.
So
I-
I mean, you could argue like they don't want to pay for the FCC testing because if they grossly fail the hardware audit, then
Right.
they have to redo the product and then they have to go pay for it twice.
Right, but they should not fail the audit because
Yeah.
their proposal.
The only here's what I would say is any of these guys using the ECC 608, like as long as they've done it right, like there's no reason. I would see value in if you're using a different security approach, you can submit a kind of pre-production unit to make sure your security implementation is going to be okay before you go through all your regulatory testing.
I actually really like that a lot.
You know, we can just structure it. We don't have to say that these have to happen serially, right? Like, what am I trying to say?
Right now it's structured that the FCC or other certifications can happen at the same time as the hardware audit.
Yeah. So why is everyone waiting to submit to the FCC? I mean, I can see they're allowed to wait to submit to the FCC until they pass their hardware audit, but that doesn't mean that they're approved. We just say you're only approved when all the checkboxes are done, and we're basically don't have to change anything about the current process.
But then we have to look at it twice, Jeremy, because what happens is Sophie will send out the preliminary, here's the hardware audit. We kind of all look at it, maybe give a preliminary okay. And then 3 weeks later, she finally gets the FCC or CE, and it goes back around again. So it's overhead for her and overhead for us to kind of look at it twice.
I see.
That's what, yes. So before I didn't really know the hardware audit process so well. I was just kind of waiting to understand it better. Now that I understand it, I feel like, yeah, it's exactly right. That's the work. Where now I'm chasing people who are pending and looking at that tracker all the time to make sure that nobody is selling things when they haven't been approved.
Perhaps we should just not bring them to vote until they've passed the hardware, the MOC hardware, and have got the approvals, and then bring them to vote. So, and then just tell the manufacturers, look, the MOC won't vote on it until you've got all these things. You know, right. you've got all the, we've give you all the how-to guides, we give you everything, you know, and then just get it all finalized before you bring it to vote. And then it puts the onus back on them to hurry it along.
If we are voting on that, I would say yes.
Yeah, I'm totally fine restructuring it. And
we don't have to do anything paperwork wise. This is what it already says. It's just somehow we got in this pending thing.
I see. Yeah. No, I think it's a no-brainer where everyone here who's chimed in agrees we can restructure it however it need be. I had one more thing to add. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, if anybody complains, just say, look, the audit procedure is really clear. Let us know if you're having a problem running your own audit. It should be enough that they can run the audit themselves before shipping the unit, right?
That's
and if
the expectation, actually. They actually have a checkbox that they're supposed to respond yes or no, that they did the audit themselves at home.
Yeah, and it's on them if they didn't do that and don't pass. But if anybody complains, we really want to have, you know, some confidence we're going to pass the audit, and they say, well, just you can run the audit procedure yourself. If we ever find where your audit passes and ours doesn't, we can revisit that. But you have to run it. You can control this. Audit yourself, and you should have a pretty good idea where they're going to pass. So I'm fine restructuring it so that we don't vote, that we don't have this FCC pending resolution, that it's a vote that happens at the end when you have everything together.
Right. But I think the exception cases are people who are using a different security measure. And you know, again, I think those manufacturers kind of have a opening, you know, we need to be more flexible on working with them early to make sure that the security paths are going down is going to be okay.
Yeah, so how would we specify this in a fair way?
Well, just be clear, if you're using an ECC 608 or an approved security, measure, I don't know if we have any other ones that we're saying are approved, right?
Yeah.
And the expectation is like you submit everything at once, including your FCC testing. If you have a pending application for a new security measure, then the MOC will work with you to look at it, review.
Yeah, we do have some language in there called like HIP 19 amendment or something for your security module. So maybe it could be key to that.
I think it still remains the same though, doesn't it? If at the end of the day, they can pass the MOC audit, but and then we just go back and say, oh, your audit's fine. However, the team won't vote on it until you've got the FCC through or the CE or whichever area you're selling into. So we just go back to them and say,
yeah,
you passed the audit, everything looks good, but you need the certification before the guys vote on it. Pretty simple for me.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe there's a halfway thing for if you're under the HIP 19 amendment procedure, or anybody at any time can ask, and maybe we cover it with some cost. Say, oh, if you want a secondary audit where you do first audit and then you get pending approval, and then we have to come back and examine it again, you can pay for that so that there's enough time in the queue. That might be a solution. So, I mean, we're back to the halfway where we have an MCC pending vote, but at least someone's getting paid in the audit procedure to go do that check again. Are you comfortable with that, Sophie?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for the non-standard security, anything, that's non-ECC, yeah, I mean, I will need time to work with you and Lewis on even how we're gonna, how do we even look at something like that? Even if the onus is on the manufacturer to help us with a process, it still requires more than just me in the loop there.
Yeah.
So more time is better in that case.
Cool. It sounds like we're generally agreement, but is it a vote-worthy thing? Is it something we have to vote to change this? It sounds like we didn't really adopt this as a vote. It's just sort of a procedure we've been doing. So this is just an internally procedure change.
Yeah, I don't think we need to vote on it. It's just, I believe now that I think about it, the reason that we started doing the FCC pending was that we had such a bottleneck, because I was moving stuff forward with Cokes also for onboarding, while the audit was going on. Now we are not really in a bottleneck anymore. So
cool.
We can do things at a normal pace.
Yeah. I think that one's resolved. I think that's it on our agenda.
There's something here about I think maybe should be in the status part of things, but one of the mods, Guns FGLRY, just some problem about network development in Russia.
Let's see. My first gut is punt it over to the DY LoRa committee, because they're the ones that has to deal with okay, what frequency you're going to plan for region and how to coordinate there. But maybe explain a bit more how we
just link stuff. They sent me a whole a rant that was about another vendor, but this screenshot was from a vendor's support to a customer who said, we don't have the certificates for RS 864, but EU 866 frequency works in Russia. So I pinged that vendor and asked them about it, and they said, yes, we said we don't have that certificate, but the frequency works in Russia.
Well, that's technically along our lines of you can't sell in a region you don't have regulatory approval, right? And so yeah, it doesn't matter if the frequencies are compatible. It doesn't mean you have regulatory approval. So if it's the vendor selling in an in a region they don't have approval for, that's pretty clear, like no,
Yeah, right.
not
Okay.
approved. Other than that, like people buying outside that region and then shipping them in, and we can't control that. People do that in some cases in Asia. I know that in Korea, for example, it's a sub ban of the US one. So technically you could take a US unit and bring it into Korea, and it would probably work just fine. It may not be tuned perfectly, but they have a different regulatory body, and you would technically need their approval to actually sell to the public in that region. So I feel comfortable making a ruling that if we find evidence that a manufacturer is selling to the public in a region they're not allowed to, we take action.
Okay.
I agree with that.
I will communicate that back. I have one more question that's not on this meeting notes, and I think Brad and Patrick, I emailed this to you. So if you want to take a minute to read it later and get back to me. But in the Helium proof of coverage code, we have a few frequencies that it transmits on, and they're between 903 and 905 megahertz. But then in our app note, it says we go from 902.3 to 914.9. And then there's nothing in the app note that talks about 923 to 927. And this is confusing people and confusing me also, because now I'm finally reading the app note and I'm like, what I really need is a list of the frequencies. And if it's not going to be in the app note, how do I get that information and communicate it clearly to people so that we don't have so much back and forth with you did your FCC certification wrong?
So I think the first one is, what's the app note?
You're referring to the Semtech app notes?
Yeah. The app note that is for certification of Helium for the Helium network.
The one that we put together.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, it should mention both, the 125 kilohertz uplink channels that run from 90 whatever 2 to 914, and then it should also cover the downlink channels 923.5 to 927.5, I think. So
yeah,
I mean, to full answer, I think is there are more than 8 channels in the uplink, right? At least in the US 915 band.
yeah, so there are 64, but currently, even though Helium is only using subband 2, they could in the future operate all, basically.
Yeah, and there's talk of having
to,
64 channel concentrators if people want to do them.
So they should, obviously test for all channels. It doesn't mean that when you do FCC testing, you have to test all channels. You just have to pick some.
You have to
pick
your extremes. You usually have to pick your lower bound and upper bound. So Sophie, can you just send us is this in the email, the link to the exact document you're referring to?
Yes, it's actually in that email. I'm trying to find the email.
Okay.
Yeah, I vote that Brad and Patrick hammer this out.
Yeah, we can hammer this out. That's not a problem.
Yeah, that would be great. That would save also just a lot of time in the back and forth. Okay. Patrick, can you find the email? I feel like probably.
Let me search. Sophie, do you know when you sent this?
Yeah, about like Friday maybe.
Friday. 10:21. No, that's Christina.
Friday.
A new FCC question.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
All right. Okay. I got it.
Excellent. Yeah, searching for Patrick or Brad plus FCC just brings up like hundreds of emails.
Yeah, no, this was sent out on Thursday, the 21st.
Thursday when?
Thursday, the 21st of October.
Which email did I get it? Did you send it to my Emirate email?
She sent it to your, hang on.
Yeah, I will send it to your Emirate email, Brad.
Yes, brad@emirate.io.
But here, I'll send it again.
Oh, I got it. I found it.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay.
All right. Sorry about my fan noise here.
Yeah, I think we just have to widen up the range.
Yeah.
Well, it already states it, right? It states 902.3 to 914.9. Those are the lower and upper bounds of the range. They have to test for the frequency hopping spectrum, and then for digital transmission system, they have to test 923.5 to 927.5. But
Okay. So
maybe we just have to reword some things in the app. I'll have to take a look at it again.
Okay.
Yeah,
And to be clear, there are future abilities.
I think like most of the information's here actually. If you
Yeah, I think it is too. It's just
maybe just some wording. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think part of the confusion is helping people understand, look, we're asking for requirements that are a little bit broader than what the network uses right now, and understanding, yes, you will notice the network only uses subband 2,
Yeah, maybe.
But we're not saying
we,
that's your minimum.
Yeah.
You have to test beyond that.
Exactly. Maybe we need to explicitly say that, hey, in the future, Helium might, use all 64 channels. So.
Well, they're
or
can't do that, but
no, but meaning that what I should say is they might assign different regions, different, or not just different regions, but say in a city where there is too much traffic on subband 2, they might say, well, in part of the city, we're going to switch to subband 1 or subband 5. So
yeah, I think that's better wording. It's like, you need to be able to be at least subband agile. And to do that, you would have to test, all of the frequencies in your region.
Yeah, you don't have to test them all. You just need to
test the upper and lower bounds.
Yeah. And you may have to show that you can randomly hop on the channels. That's what the FCC looks for.
Cool.
I think we're basically done. Anybody have any other? This is like a handy forum, and also have your face recorded. Well, I'm not face presentable, but I mean voice recorded for future if you want to.
Only Phil is getting his face recorded.
Yeah, thank you, Phil, for doing that. I forgot I had this meeting today, so I didn't even get dressed up.
If we just wanted to talk about those pictures that Sophie posted, I just took a look at them. The Pisces pictures.
Oh yeah.
I find them a bit laughable. It looks like somebody gave a bunch of guys a couple of gateways and said, just go kind of attach them to a wall somewhere and make it look like it's a real installation. It's almost laughable. The installations are really, really, really poor. And, they have like whip antennas, the little black plastic bendable antenna. That's like 1 or 2 dBi. They have it attached, kind of stuck, into a couple of roof tiles with a cable just running loose. It's I'm not buying these installations.
No, I'm not. But maybe I'm missing the whole. I need to go catch up on the whole conversation.
Pisces sent an email that said that I know that some people in the Helium community questioned the large-scale deployment of Pisces machines in Hantong, Shaanxi province, China last week. I would like to make an explanation for this matter to avoid some misunderstandings. And so there's a link. I just put the whole email into a Google Doc. Because it was kind of
I see they're trying to head off another fiasco.
Yeah.
We haven't asked them yet, but by volunteering this hilarious, definitely not convincing me of anything yet.
I think I previously put something on the oversight channel, Jeremy, and I don't know if you had a look at it, but I put the link onto one of the hotspots. It's actually there in the channel, and if you go further into the wallet, I put the link on of one hotspot. But if you look into the wallet, it is pretty blatant, and to me it looks like another farm, another Chinese farm.
Well, we could do my sort of scenario now is I have limited time to do it, but there are researchers on the Helium team. I know they've hired a data scientist. Might be able to ask them, hey, when you get some free time, here are the parameters I've used to sniff out farms, and there's stuff that I haven't quite communicated publicly, but it's it's some of the stuff that helped find out what's going on with Codex. It's just a matter of bandwidth. I mean, I don't want to be a prosecutor or like the detective has to go down all these rabbit holes for all these cases. I'm glad helping find someone, but I'm glad the mock, can hear about these things, but like us being our own, what do we call it, police agency, and I don't have the time to go out and do it, which is why I hate doing these things. We have to talk about expanding the role. Is that something we do? Or do we just wait until people offer evidence and act on it? It's a larger conversation. It is bugging me, though, definitely. I can try to have someone look into that large cluster you're talking about, Phil, and see if it meets some of the, I don't know, the anomalies that I found before. And if so, then we can start the whole process again.
Yeah, I was surprised Helium didn't, given the Cortex thing, I was surprised Helium didn't pick up on that quicker, because Pisces, as I recall, the initial ordering was only one per person. So for them,
wild.
Obviously they've, suddenly 1,000 pops up straight away in China, and I know they've come back with this email, but it just looks very dodgy to me.
Yeah, no. If someone offered this to me and I had asked them for it, it definitely would. I would have said, "You're now more suspicious than when we started." What is it? Oh my goodness.
I mean, that quickly, that just brings us to the other thing, the so-called partners that Cortex were working with. Them guys are not going to go away, are they? And I know one of the manufacturers had came for Heltech, was it, who came forward and said that they'd been approached by one of the same companies.
Yeah.
Them guys aren't going to go away. Surely they've gone to Bobcat and people like that.
Yeah.
So,
no,
I mean, do we have to?
Here's my opinion on this. It's basically until proof of coverage gets a bit more advanced and we get things like Secure Gateway HIP 22 and some of these other HIP proposals to help reinforce it. When that day comes, we don't have to do any more of this stuff. But until that day comes, we are sort of the last gateway step to helping bolster up proof of coverage. This is one area where we have acted clearly. So to answer your question, Phil, is in the long run, no, we won't have to keep doing this forever, but it's clear in some really blatant cases that maybe it is our job. I'm really struggling with it though, because it is so time consuming. I mean, just doing this one Codex thing is now, it's almost like a full-time job for me. And it's definitely no fun.
It's one of the most emotive subjects as well in the community, isn't it, as well? So that obviously kind of shovels it back to us all the time.
Yeah,
it's very emotive for people.
Yeah, it's our job to represent the community, so I'm totally fine absorbing their emotions and bringing it forward. Anyways, yeah, I will look at these. I'll pencil in some time, see if I can get a hold of David, I believe, who is finishing his PhD, and then he's going to become full-time.
Yeah, I mean, I come back to some of the validator proposals on, blacklisting people.
Yeah.
As a long-term solution to the problem, and is there how is there an economic incentive to root out people who are gaming?
Yeah, I would love for validators to take this over. I think the community is a little bit mired in understanding the nuances between allowing validators to take it over and having DY be the central authority which does it. I'm trying to push it.
It's got to be decentralized. I mean, that's
yeah, cool. But a lot of people are stuck thinking that it's going to be a centralized thing. Like, I don't want it to be centralized. I don't like this HIP. The HIP is, I'm trying to structure that HIP, although I haven't had a lot of time. Say, look, let's come up with a technical way it can happen. He's going to put the code in there. And then we'll let the validators figure it out amongst themselves, whether this is an issue that they care about. But once the machinery is in there for them to do that, that is a big thing I'd love to see. So it's not something we have to do ourselves, but we're not there yet. And either we get involved in helping to push that HIP forward or manage it ourselves or stop.
No, but I think it has to, I mean, maintaining the integrity of the network and getting rid of the concern about gaming, I think is really strategically important as we look at getting, more real use cases, more institutional network coverage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's absolutely critical, especially for the end users who we've
Maybe
often
we
said
can
are.
take this over on chat and brainstorm. I apologize because I have to go.
Yeah, we're over our time anyway, so this is sort of free from chat anyway.
Everyone have a good one. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. All right, well, I'll look at these in the next 10 minutes. If I see anything blatant, I'll start the whole process again. The other thing too, Phil, I want to talk about is, we sort of set the standard. It's not just these hotspots are involved, but again, it's a partner, someone where the manufacturer has shipped a lot of units. They can or should know what's going on, right? I don't want to be anything like, well, okay, well, we know these are all Pisces miners, but do we know how the manufacturer's tied to them? That's another bit of legwork we have to assemble.
Yeah, I understand. Like I say, the reason it jumped out obviously was because they initially was supposed to be selling one per person.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we didn't tell them they had to do that. And so if they switch, how do we say, well, that's a no-no?
Yeah.
No, we didn't. It makes it suspicious. I agree. Absolutely. All right. Well, that's enough for me.
Okay. Reminder just to look at deeper.
Yeah. Doing
Thank
that
you,
next.
everybody.
Yeah. See you guys Wednesday if you're all attending the community call.
Yep. Okay.
See you on
Thanks,
channel.
everybody.
Take care, bye.
Good job.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye.
Have a good evening. Bye.